We have, at our reference desk, we count essentially how many times the staff helps people. We had 13,107 reference interactions. That was a 10% increase. Right now, we are averaging 40 to 50 reference interactions a day. So that definitely is going to go up. A lot of that is using computers, it's copying, it's faxing, it's getting on email, things like that. Printing from phones. Oh my gosh, if you need to print from your phone, we got you. It's all good. So that's a lot of what we do for folks. We had 8,385 uses of our public computers, so that was a 20% increase from the year before. So, you know, we may think everybody's got a phone in their pocket. Why do we need, you know, public computers in the library? But we're definitely still seeing a lot of use of all of those things. So, overall, we have been seeing really good increases. We hope to continue to see those. We are seeing a much higher increase in circulation of electronic items than we are in physical. So that's definitely something that we're going to have to keep track of. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully I can report back to you next year, and we've got great numbers across the board. So the only other thing I would let you guys know, obviously we are always looking to help the school out any way that we can, help the students out, help the teachers out, anything that we can partner, we're happy to do that kind of stuff. So if there's ever anything that anybody thinks, oh man, we could really use some help on this, or this would be a great thing for the library to help with, please just give us a call. We're happy to be partnered on that. Or anything you want to let me know, happy to do it.
Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for everything you do.
Yeah, thank you.
And we will move on to item D1, the new diploma guidelines from the IDOE. And I believe Principal McLaughlin is going to fill us in on those new requirements.
Yes, sir, Mr. Yarger, thank you. So what I have presented to you is a draft. It's still in draft form from the IDOE. Their hope is they take some more public comment and present it for adoption at the November 13th State Board of Education meeting. So we anticipate that it will look very similar to this format, but there may still be a few tweaks in the diploma before they finalize it, and their hope again is for November 13th. This impacts the class of 2029, so our current 8th graders are the ones that would. It is.
Our mics are working.
The class of 2029, our current 8th graders will be the ones that would be impacted by this change in the diploma. The comparison sheet is a new sheet that they just put out with the DOE. It does a pretty good job of at least explaining the difference between the two diplomas, which is our current Core 40 diploma and what the new proposed diploma would be. And you can see from side to side what was on the Core 40, what's proposed in the new one. One of the things that jumps out first in the English portion is one communications focused course. Right now it's simply 8 credits in English. So this could possibly be a speech credit. There's also talk about other courses that may have a strong speaking component to them that may be able to be used for this. Maybe if you're involved in an organization like FFA, through parliamentary procedure and club meetings, things like that can even count towards that communication focused course. The algebra credit, the interesting thing here is that students can earn that algebra 1 credit in middle school and it counts towards high school. In the past, even though they earned it and it counts towards high school credit, they still had to achieve 6 additional credits in math at the high school setting. So that changes a little bit there with math. One of the biggest changes is in social studies. There is no need for requirement of economics. They are also allowing for world language or world-focused social studies. What they told us is the world language piece of that, what they call advanced world language, one college and career class that is taken at the middle school in 8th grade, that still counts as a credit. On the back side of that, or the second page that you'll see scrolling up there, then you get the seals. So there's two honor seals. There's two seals, the honor seal and the honor seal plus, or honors plus seal. The difference between these is twofold. One, the front side of that, or the first part of that, is the new diploma. Okay, if you only meet those requirements, those 42 credits on the front side, you can still graduate from high school. You don't have to do anything with the honors seal or the honors plus seal. But you do have to hit parts 2 and 3 of the graduation pathways that we're currently in. So that's a work-based, service-based, or project-based experience, and then meeting a benchmark of passing the SAT or having a career pathway with Concentrator A and a Concentrator B, along with the capstone course. So if you don't do anything else, parts 2 and 3 of the current graduation pathways have to go with the initial diploma. If you earn a diploma with an honors seal or an honors plus seal, then you don't have to complete part 2 and part 3 of the current graduation pathways. And this is where they've dug in and broken it down into whether you're going to go to college, you're going to go to the workforce, or you're going to go in the military. So enrollment, enlistment, or employment. And they have varying criteria for each of those diplomas. The first one, the honors seal for enrollment, kind of follows what the old academic honors diploma was, with additional credits in world language, science, and math, and some other key components there. The employment one, getting a seal there, is showing the hours that you've worked in a particular field. And then the enlistment, you throw in things like participation in JROTC and other courses, leadership in extracurriculars or athletics count as those. So they've tried to make them more personal to each individual student, and you can earn a seal with those requirements as well. A few things that they talked about. I just watched a webinar, participated in a webinar on Friday of last week, I think it was. There are 3 pages of a Google Doc of questions from educators around the state that the state has yet to answer, pertaining to parts of this that are still very unclear. And we're hoping through the Indiana Association of School Principals to get some answers to those questions before they come up with a final draft of the new diploma requirements.
Pat, what are they telling you timeline-wise when they're going to make final decisions? I'm hearing various different dates, but what are you understanding as making final decisions with this document? Sure.
They're, I think, soliciting some more public comment along with educators around the state, and I believe their November board meeting date is the 13th is what their hope is.
Board comments or questions that you have for Mr. McLaughlin on this?
Mr. McLaughlin, do we have is there any classes that will disappear, or maybe additional offerings with this, or what do you anticipate?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the concerns that I have is only needing 1 credit of physical education. I think that could impact that department a little bit. The other department that I'm concerned about is social studies, with doing away with world history or world geography being a requirement along with economics. So that's 3 different classes in that one department. They can still be utilized, but if students are taking a world language instead of world history, then that could certainly impact the number of students that take a history class. I don't think that there's really much in terms of a class or classes that we would need to look to offer, but this is going to create, through some of the seals with what they can do outside of school that earn points towards their diploma, a record-keeping situation where staff that maybe did something else in the building may now have to take on data entry and record-keeping of those kind of things.
I understand. So that would be something that the teacher or someone in administration would need to track?
Yeah, so like one of the things is 650 hours of work. And so somebody's got to record that, track it, and all those kind of things. So that's just one example, but when you get down into the Honors Plus seal, there's a lot more of that stuff that is subjective versus sitting in a classroom and getting instruction that somebody's going to have to take care of.
So is the work-based learning part of the employment part, is that so you have to be in one of those half-day programs?
So that's a great question. That was one of the questions on the 3-page docket of unanswered questions. They're saying they don't believe so. They're trying to leave a lot of flexibility for individual school districts to make that determination. So if I'm not in the work-based learning program here because I'm involved in other things, but I work in the summer, do some landscaping work for a company here in town, I could count that, is what they're hoping that the Board of Education at the state would allow school corporations to do, and not specifically tie it to the work-based learning half-day program here.
But that would make more work for you because you got to track it, right?
Correct.
Or someone has to track it.
But in the long run, it would be best for students because some of those kids just can't fit it in their schedule. So if they're able to earn that by working weekends or something like that, where they're not missing a half a day if they're involved in, the upper level classes for AP or dual credit, it could benefit the students. And yeah, it may create a little bit of additional work for us, but if that's the best plan for the student, we would certainly look into that.
Is there any other questions? Well, as with all things with the state, it's a moving target, and we'll continue to follow it, and whatever we're told, we'll do it. And thanks for following up, Mr.
Right.
McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate
Yarger.
the info. We'll move on to D2, 2023-24 academic results. Mr. Peters and Mr. Brimberry.
Yes, tonight we're going to give you a brief snapshot into the ever-changing world of elementary and secondary education with updates for IREAD 3 and ILearn data. And so I just want to share with you the assessment results that we have for 23. This was last school year, 23-24. IREAD 3, to start out with, you've heard me say before, our goal is to reach 95% proficient by 2027, where our kids are reading at or above grade level by the time they leave third grade, and how crucial and how important that is to set that foundation for them to be successful throughout their career. It also aligns with our strategic plan, where we have said that our K-12 students reading at or above grade level by 2029. And so I can share with you that our district average was 84.4. The state average was 82.5. Would somebody want to celebrate and do a happy dance for me right now? No takers. We could celebrate that because our teachers, our students are working very, very hard. Now, have we reached the 95%? No, but we're climbing and we're getting there, and we're doing a great job of trying to meet that. IREAD 3 is taken in March, and students that do not pass get a retest prior to the end of the school year in May. But during that time from March to May, before that retest, students are in small group, working each day on those skills that they have not mastered yet, and then they retake that test. And so we're excited about that improvement that we're seeing. I will tell you that last year we opted in with other districts across the state that our second graders took the IREAD 3 test for the very first time, which proved valuable for us because it gave us some additional data that we could use to program for our third graders moving forward. This year, all second graders will be taking IREAD 3 this spring. So I just wanted to share that with you. The next slide talks about our ILearn test. This is grades 3, 4, and 5 that are taking that in the elementary school. You can see the red is HCCSC, the blue is the Indiana State average. You can see English. The district was 35.8% proficient. The state average is 40.24%. You can see math. We're over the state average. I can tell you 2 years ago we adopted a new math curriculum that ramped up the rigor of our instruction. Teachers have worked very, very hard to implement that with fidelity, and we can see the results of that from 2 years ago, and we celebrate that. I will tell you with ILearn, it's one test. It's very rigorous. It's given one time in the spring. We as a district have opted in with other districts across the state to the ILearn pilot for this year. which means there's going to be 3 checkpoints throughout the year during assessment windows, starting in September, with one summative at the end. And the IDOE has given us a blueprint of the standards that will be covered in those assessments. That's a novel idea. So now we know what's going to be tested so that we can work with our kids and teachers can work with our kids to make sure that they've mastered those skills. If they've not mastered it, they'll take assessment A. If they haven't mastered it during that testing window, then we're going to review, reteach, and reassess to ensure that they have mastered those standards. So we're excited about that pilot and being a part of that with other state districts. Comparisons, I want to just show you some comparisons. These are comparison groups, and the cohorts are put together based on demographic location, enrollment size, and free and reduced lunch percentages. And our schools are highlighted in yellow. We're moving up in our cohort groups. That's what we want to see. Again, our teachers and staff are working very hard. You see Salamone and Andrews are in the same cohort group. The next slide will show you Flint Springs. Again, this is just a list of schools that are in their cohort group with those same comparisons. So you see where Flint Springs is at. Next slide, it shows Horace Mann and their cohort group. Next slide is Lincoln and their cohort group, and Roanoke and their cohort group. So again, you can see that we're right there. We're making progress. We're moving up, and that's exciting to see. Let me share with you and introduce to you Marissa Tinkle is our Elementary Professional Development Coordinator. She has done a tremendous job of developing and providing professional learning for our elementary teachers. Marissa was instrumental in developing our HCCSC Elementary Guided Literacy document that provides a system-wide framework for what should happen in our elementary classrooms. And so, Marissa, if you would just kind of share out just briefly, you've got some slides there about our literacy instruction and some of the changes and additions we've made to accomplish that 95% proficient by 2027.
Yes, thank you. We went into a thorough investigation last year and left no stone unturned, especially in the area of literacy instruction, to try to figure out what we need to do the same, what we need to do better, and what we need to change altogether. And so you can see on the slide here the changes and the additions that we've made. The first being in Tier 1 core instruction. We've added Hegarty and Orton-Gillingham at our Tier 1 instruction. We've used those pieces in the past somewhat, but that is district-wide now in Tier 1 instruction. We've also rewritten our comprehension reading units. They are now based on the new academic standards that went into effect last year, and teachers are also receiving writing professional development through SMECINS. We also switched our assessments and the way we do them and how we use them. The first is the foundational reading universal screener. All students take that. Based on those results, some students have additional diagnostic assessments to pinpoint exact areas of strengths and weaknesses. You can also see, and as Jay mentioned, we're opting into the ILearn formative checkpoints that will give us more formative data throughout the year that we can provide intervention in. Lastly, with literacy instruction, we are doing our intervention slightly different. We are using that diagnostic assessment data to provide even more precision in the area of intervention and more precision in those 5 pillars that you can see there in phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And the way we're doing that is through what we're calling WIN time, and WIN stands for what I need. And that's 30 minutes a day in which all students participate in some sort of activity at their level and what they need. All grade level teachers, interventionists, and resource teachers all work together to provide intervention during that time. And with that comes regularly scheduled data team meetings, again looking at that foundational reading universal screener and diagnostic assessments to provide precise intervention. Then with our math instruction, as Mr. Peters mentioned, that we've seen growing and great results with our Reveal curriculum, so we're going to continue with its use. We also switched up our math assessments. We're using a new standards-based benchmark assessment. It is through our new app that we've adopted for math practice. We adopted IXL. That was from the encouragement from our teachers who some of our schools have used that in the past and we're using it last year, and our teachers requested that app, and so we were excited to offer that to them, and they are happily diving into that and using that in their math instruction already this year. It is a standard-based app. It has adaptive practice to provide practice so that we can fill gaps, but also enrich students beyond the grade level expectation. And what I find best is that it coincides with the reveal math lesson in a very easy to manage way for our teachers. So those are some of the additions and changes to our math and literacy instruction to improve our data.
Thank you, Marissa. Any questions before we turn over to Mr. Brimberry and Mrs. Brown?
So what grades do you start testing, doing the assessment for like math and English? Is it first grade or?
Last year we opted in as a pilot, so this school year, second grade will be taking IREAD 3 to get a jump on those kiddos that we look at that data and see what we need to do to help them be successful in third grade. If you don't pass IREAD 3 in third grade, you'll have a chance to take it twice as a fourth grader. If you don't pass it in fourth grade, you'll have two times in fifth grade to pass it before you move on to middle school.
And then math?
In math, then we've got formative assessments with our new math curriculum. We've got a pre-test, post-test kind of assessment, and that starts in kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
Yes. Great questions.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. For the secondary, I know we're going to try to keep this to a few minutes, Mr. Trout, but I will tell you we are excited to talk about this tonight. I have with me, you saw Mr. McLaughlin back there as the principal of the high school, Lynn Brown, our assistant principal at the high school. Jared Hamill is also a big part of the high school. I'll talk about the middle school shortly. We're going to tag team this. Those closest to the action deserve the credit. And as Lynn talks a little bit about some of this, I'll jump in and comment. But I will tell you, our teachers, students, administrators, and to be honest with you, this board, I am thrilled at the progress that's being made at Huntington County Community Schools. You're going to see some things that are pretty exciting. Some of them were climbing the mountain. Some of them were leading top of the mountain in the state in schools like ours. Others, we have areas of focus, and I'm excited about that as well in terms of some of the programming that's in place. So we're going to talk about each slide, and Lynn and I will go through, but Lynn Brown has been a huge, huge part of the last 2 to 3 years, and even many before Mr. Trout, myself, and even Mr. Peters was back with us. In terms of her leadership academically in this district, she is a true professional and is truly talented, and we're going to let her talk a little bit about this, and I'll chime in. So, Lynn, if you want to talk about the first slide, please.
Is that just the way to say I'm old, Chuck, that I've been here for a long time? A few years ago, in about 2020, the state said that the SAT was going to become the graduating exam. And everybody in the state's heart stopped just a little bit because the SAT was not designed to be a graduating exam, right? That's not the purpose of it. After our heart stopped, we had a moment and we thought, well, at least we know what the target is, because the SAT does not change as quickly as the ILearn and the iStep. And so even though that was a target that was pretty difficult to hit, we knew it wasn't going to move very much. Of course, they did change it 2 years ago, right in the middle of that process. But we have some really good news. Because our teachers took that challenge and looked at what was on the SAT, looked at our brand new state standards, and took apart the test and said, this part of the test fits best with algebra. This part of the test fits best with Algebra 2. This part of the test fits best with 10th grade English standards. And they intentionally took those pieces apart. Our SAT scores are above state average. Now, would I like them to be higher? I absolutely would. But we are significantly above state standard, and we continue to be. We keep growing in the positive, and the state keeps growing in the negative. I believe that the state actually, this year, so this graph doesn't show that, this year the state went down 4.4 percentage points, while Huntington North continued to grow in the positive. Jay, they wouldn't do a happy dance for you, and I'm a Wesleyan, so I'm not supposed to dance, but I'm just going to do like a little our kids are tearing it up. Like they really are taking this on. I want you to realize that the English portion, you have to get a 480, and the math portion, you have to get a 530. This is not like SAT for beginners, right? This is actually what we ask kids to do for college, and they need to do it in March of their junior year. So we still have a year and a quarter to get them ready for college. So if you're not doing a happy dance, I'm going to do it for you. I don't care. I also am going to show you that we are outperforming the state for graduation rates. And the last one on the end, our hero, Sue Forgey, the keeper of all things data at Huntington North High School, projects it will be at least at 95.26. And there's a little bird in the school that says maybe we have one or two more kids that could get over the finish line here in October, before the date. So that number could be higher, but it should be at least there.
Board, focusing on the first two parts, those are extremely valuable information to our kids in this high school. Intentionality of programming, intentionality of multiple buckets for children is best practice in progressive high schools around the country. Those communities that allow to meet the children where they are and to put in programs that allow them to be successful and then to grow at rapid rates is what you're seeing there. We are climbing extremely fast in some key categories here. The SAT, as the state is going the wrong direction, or as they've changed the assessment to ensure sometimes challenges for our kids, you're seeing Huntington North through their teachers and through their collaborative nature of discussion of what we do affects how children learn and how they're assessed, and it's intentional in this high school. And I want to congratulate not just the high school teachers, but our teachers as they move forward at each level here. This is a cumulative score. These are things that show, is the process of K through 12 education working at different rates for different children? And your scores show you in certain ports today that they're working at a higher rate than many, many schools in the state of Indiana. So the intentionality of the academic program is the thing I could talk about for hours. I won't do that to you tonight, but I will tell you these are pretty exciting. When you see projected rates, I know what Mr. McLaughlin inherited going on year 3 ago, Pat, and he won't say it, but I will. But looking at how the kids achieve, when they achieve, and why they don't achieve became priority 1 for Pat McLaughlin and his team. This is an outstanding high school because of that type of leadership. So proud for you to see some of this stuff. We have areas of focus, but I will tell you the leadership and the outcomes here are pretty amazing, and I want to thank Pat and his team and our teachers for that. You can go to the next. Go ahead. Yeah, that's fine.
So we are blessed here at Huntington North High School because we have an amazing team of leaders that caught the vision for college and career pathways really early. Mr. McLaughlin and Mrs. Drummond are leaders in the state and in the nation. People ask Mrs. Drummond to go to all kinds of things and talk about what we are doing with college and career pathways. While the state has begun its climb, we are climbing past them, and that will not slow down. Our kids have more college and career pathways here at Huntington North High School than just about anywhere in the state.
Amazing.
Like that is legitimately true. People call us often to ask us about that. So the next slide shows the schools that the state say are most like Huntington North High School. So what I'm excited about there is you see that we beat them all, except somehow Shelbyville had like some twins that were better at math than us, because literally that's 2 kids in this count. So we are at the top of the scale for like schools for SAT here at Huntington North High School. I'm doing another happy dance. I don't care. I'm just going to do it. Let me tell you how we did it one more time, though. This isn't fancy stuff. We worked really hard on our curriculum maps. We worked really hard on our common formative assessments. We worked really hard at finding out exactly what was on the test. The College Board now gives us 6 practice tests. And we tore those 6 practice tests apart so that we knew every single question and when we would introduce that type of question to kids. We also use Study Sync, the English curriculum that's 6 through 12 here at the high school, and we seek out those pieces that are rigorous and look exactly like the SAT so that our kids, when they see it on the SAT, are like, yeah, I know how to do that. I do it all the time in English class. They really whine as freshmen because it's rigorous, but by the time they're juniors, they're like, I understand this. And the same thing with our math teachers. So looking at common graduation data, and this is a little bit projected. Remember that graduation data doesn't fully stop until October. So with 1 or 2 more kids, we're probably in the 2nd place if that happens, and I believe that it might very well happen. If not, we're in the 3rd place for graduation data.
Board, the backwards mapping is a term you will hear from Len, Pat, their team, and our middle school, as well as Mr. Peters and his team. But what they're saying is, when do we want them to know it? How often do we want to teach it, and when? And when do we reteach and enhance based on the results that we see? So when you see common formative assessments, when you see reteaching model, enhancement model, that system is in place now 6 through 12 in all buildings for us. I say that because that process started in different levels here. The results of that and the intentionality of the curriculum and backward mapped of when do we teach it, when do we reteach it, when do we enhance it, and how is that application appropriate for when we're assessed. Those things are in place at the high school. You'll see what the plan is as we have done the work at the middle school as Len takes us forward to the middle school results.
Hey, Chuck, before you move on, if we could back up one slide with this. I don't want to run through this because the perception could be is we picked these schools to be part of our cohort.
Right, great.
And I just want the community to understand the state picked these schools for us because
Yes.
why, Chuck?
Yeah, the state disaggregates. Back when John and Jay and I, a few years back, you could get on the website and try to find like schools based on different determinations you might do. The state does all that for you now. So we're all playing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. We don't get to choose the schools listed. They find schools in the demographics that and size that you have, and they place them for you. And so when you go to this slide, and ours is projected, theirs is last year. Most schools stay within 1 to 2%. Typically, unless they have an anomaly, but the state chooses all the categories you're going to see throughout all of Jay's and all of my presentation tonight. So these are not things we picked and choose, which is a great point, Mr. Trout. These are things the state of Indiana wants us to compare to.
So I went a little rogue, Mr. Trout, today. Instead of eating lunch, I looked at the N8 scores because they're the people we compete with on every other level. And I don't have that slide because Cindy her head would explode if I changed the slides at the last minute, so I didn't do that. But according to the state website, the GPS, for SAT scores, we have the second highest among the N8, and we're significantly ahead of almost everybody. Somehow Leo has 41.8. We're going to take a trip to Leo and see what's going on there, because that's an outlier for all schools around us. So I truly don't have an answer for that, but I want to know that. For graduation rate, we come in tied with Columbia City, just like a 1/10 of a point tie. And then Norwell has 98%, so they're just slightly ahead of us. So in our neighborhood, we aren't quite the top, but we're second place and strong running towards the top.
Good.
Look at that. My lunch was well spent. So let me show you some good news from our middle schools for ILearn. And everything that Mr. Peters said a little bit ago about ILearn holds true for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We're doing the checkpoint piece as well, so that we'll take 3 tests, one at the end of each quarter, to see what's going on. The state did us this amazing favor, and I know you're like, really, Lynn? But really, they did. They told us exactly what standards they were going to test on what quarters. And so the teachers, Mr. Abbott's here, he will testify. We sat in a room, content area by content area, grade level by grade level, and we took apart the frameworks and the blueprint that the state gave us so that we knew exactly what standard we needed to teach in which quarter to build towards that final assessment. We've never had that kind of information for the middle school before from the state, so we're taking full advantage of it. I think that parts of this growth, and we can't claim very much of it because we did that work after Christmas is when the state started to release that information, right? So we were doing it second semester, but we're seeing some growth already from the teachers sitting in the room, knowing what's going to be on the test at a high level for the first time, and then talking about what's on the test and building common formative assessments around that. For English, we're staying with Study Sync. We had great results at the high school, and so we're asking the middle school teachers to use Study Sync with a little bit more fidelity this year than they have in the past. And then for the math team, I was super proud of the math department because they're very sequential. That's why they're math teachers, right? But they looked at that curriculum map and they really tore it apart. And they said, this is exactly what's being tested. Let's make sure we cover that. And the 8th grade and high school teachers who all teach algebra came together and had those same conversations. So the 8th graders are taking the exact same tests and final exam that the high school algebra kids are taking. All right, here's where my happy dance ends, just a little bit. So this year, we're significantly below in some places on ILearn. But if best practice, research-based strategy of we build the strong curriculum map around what we know is on the test, and we review that often with our kids and our teachers, and we use very simple strategies like reteaching when a student doesn't get it at a checkpoint. If that worked really well at the high school, why will it not work really well at the middle school? And so I am super hopeful, like I really am. I was the most hopeful this last week as we were building the presentation. There were other people that looked at those numbers and they were a little sad, and I was like, you know what, we're coming for it. We're coming for the schools around us at the high school, and we're coming for the state and the middle school. I have great expectations for the next year. So here are the things that are already in place. 6 through 12, we have curriculum maps that are aligned to the new state standards and to the blueprints that the state gave us telling us when to teach what. We have common formative assessments in the major classes 6 through 12. We have really embraced the teach, assess, reteach, look at an assessment piece over and over again model. We opted into those checkpoints, and we're talking to state as often as we can about that. We're intentional in our prep for SAT. We've written that directly into the curriculum maps, and we've built professional learning communities where teachers in the 2 middle schools are talking to each other on a regular basis, and they're also talking to high school teachers that are teaching the same content areas. I am super hopeful for next year's scores for the middle school, and I can't wait to see what our kids do on the SAT next year.
One comment I'll make before we wrap up here, board, is keep in mind when you look at percentages, those are children. Percentages are children. And when you're depending on the school, but if I picked one of the middle schools and they were X number of percent below state average, that equates to about 9 kids that did not have the success we want them to get us back to the norm. And I don't like ever comparing to state average. Mr. Trout, Mr. Peters does not either. We want our kids to have success on anything that the state or our school system deems academically important. And so these scores are unbelievably exciting in certain areas, work to be done in others. I can assure you that last slide is best practice nationwide. It's the stuff Mr. Trout used in a couple of corporations. It's the stuff that allowed a previous experience of mine to be number 1 in the state. And so our teachers will continue to work together collaboratively in a PLC. They will be supported 100%, so those percentages, which is our children, will be successful here. That's the goal. And anything outside of that thought process not allowed in the room. And so I want you to know we're extremely proud of this and also extremely driven to get better.
So thank you to Jay and Chuck and Lynn and Marissa. I appreciate that. Board, what you need to understand too is that I am in the process of putting dashboards together that I have not shared with anyone at this point that are directly a result and be pulled from our recently approved strategic plan toward the end of last year. So that second semester, we will do something similar to this on a consistent basis with different data points from throughout the district. And so literally, I'm in the process of developing those dashboards for all of us, for as a district, that we will use not only at the district level, but the building level and on down. And so just be prepared for that as this becomes more of a common practice for us, but delivered to you in a little different format so that you have a little deeper dive into that on a consistent basis here at the board meeting. So thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions? All right, it's exciting to see, I think it's interesting to see how incredibly intricate it all is. It's not just, here's a textbook, teach this lesson. It's exciting for me to see, from my standpoint, teachers not be excited about something new until they see the data, and then they get excited. It's hard to argue with the data. And for us too, and the community, and the kids. It's exciting data all around. Okay, let's move on to D3, the Bayada Home Health Care Service Agreement.
Yes, board, I am seeking your approval this evening of the Bayada Home Health Care. This is, Bayada will provide one-on-one services for a student within our school district for the 24-25 school year. This company provides an RN or LPN to care for a student every day, and that student attends school. This service is paid for Medicaid funds to be provided, may include escorting student to and from school on the school bus and providing medical care to the student or students during the school day. So I'm seeking your approval of this agreement.
Okay, and is there a motion for the agreement?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Bayada Home Healthcare Agreement with the school system.
And a second?
Second.
I think Gary was first, so we'll take his. Is there any questions or comments? Okay, and hearing none, we'll take a vote.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. McClellan? Yes. Mr. Melcher?
Yes.
Mr. Yarger?
Yes?
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Mrs. Heim?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. And we'll move on to D4, permission to furnish meals to the CDI Head Start program.
Yeah, that's the one that we pulled from the agenda.
Was removed, that's
Yep.
right.
Okay.
So we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Yes, I'll pull out a few of these for your consideration this evening, just to draw a highlight to this. The first one is E4, new classified employees wage clarification. This past summer, when I was out for FMLA, the classified members, I believe there's about 15 that I've posted in there, were hired. When I returned to work in July, I found that they were placed on a salary schedule with a 2% increase instead of the starting pay. I just did not feel right going back to these employees to inform them that they're going to get 2% less pay than what they agreed to. So I'm asking for your approval of that 2% pay increase for them. In addition, I'm seeking your approval for E5, which is 50 more hours, additional hours for our grant writing specialist, Keisha Swanigan, who has done just an outstanding job for us. With our first initial investment of $5,000, she helped us secure $510,533 in grants. And so, from the state of Indiana. So I am incredibly grateful for Keisha for helping us with that. I have no reason to believe that we will not get the same kind of results as we continue forward with her. But that $500,000 that we're using is coming in quite helpful for us that we did not have initially in our budget. Independent contractor agreements for fire and rescue. This is a sub-teacher for us in that program at the Learning Center. Also giving you a recommendation for an increase in pay for our information and data specialist, a recommendation for you there. I have listed several reasons why this increased to $4,900. This is due mainly for several changes with the DOE and online forms for our district. She spends an enormous amount of time with this, which was not part of the job initially. The DOE requires all data specialists to be part of weekly meetings alone that last 1 to 2 hours a week, in addition to some of the other offerings that she is now required to do. We've implemented a lot of job forms in our district. That's also added on to her job responsibilities. Also, we've taken a very proactive approach for implementing online form training within this too. Please understand that this increase will come from a technician not being replaced. So this is a zero add into our budget for that. So I just want to make that clarification for you because we did not hire a technician who has left. Recommendation for a title change here. And what I want to do here is to just tell you on E8, when Mr. Brimberry, assistant, left to come up here to work at the high school, we did not fill that position at our central office. And so Mrs. Lockmeyer is just thrilled is that now she is support for both Jay and Chuck in that category. So thank you, Tanya, for your work in that area. In addition, 9 and 10 are continuations of MOUs between our school district and our mentor teachers for the 4 that we have now in our district to help us with our adjunct teachers. And also 10 is between the district and the HCTA regarding that those MOUs. 11 is a contract agreement for the deaf and hard of hearing teacher that we have. 12 and 13 are sign language interpreters that we have in our district this year. 14 is CentralReach contract agreement. This is also paid from Medicare funds. Silas provides, which is called Silas, provides schools with curriculum, training, screeners, movie creators to aid and teach a social emotional learning, executive functioning, and vocational content also. So this is agreement for that, again, paid for from Medicaid funds. We have donations totaling $3,479.10 there for your approval this evening, and we continue to be grateful for our partners in our community, who you can see them listed there in your board packet. And lastly, I'm asking for your approval of the accounts payable and payroll voucher register.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Would anybody like to make a motion on the consent agenda?
I make a motion we accept the consent agenda as presented.
And is there a second?
Second.
Would anybody like to remove an item and vote on it separately? Or is there any questions or discussion? Okay. Hearing none, we will vote on items E1 through 16.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. McClellan? Yes. Mr. Melcher?
Yes.
Mr. Yarger?
Yes.
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Mrs. Heim? Yes.
And The consent agenda passes 6-0, so we will move on to F1, the financial reports for July.
Good evening, board and public, as we pivot over with, a little louder, all right.
You gotta step forward and talk into the mic there,
Okay,
okay?
I was concerned I was too close earlier, and so I did some adjustments. Is that better? Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So this evening, we have the financials prepared for the transactions that transpired during the month of July. Outside of normal operations, we had our basic grant come in and $3,194,448. So this will be the first payment of the first 6 months of the school year where our state tuition support is based off of our February numbers. So we'll again have that true up happen for September's enrollment. That'll happen in November and December. So right now we're operating off of February's ADM count. So just wanted to highlight that. Our expenses for the month totaled $2,206,802. Our ending balance after we pay all of our outstanding purchase orders and our commitments is $14,088,543.
It's important, board, to note that on the right, the percent of budget that we've expended so far up to this point is about 58%. We've received, the revenue received so far is about 56%. And so the actual budget expended is about 49%, so we're right on track with where we need to be. Now, I don't miss what Valerie told you there down on the bottom right, because I'm going to tell you about this in just a moment. This is based off revenue off our ADM counts for February. So the ADM count in this for the fall will be done in October, which will change these numbers again. So I just want you to be prepared, is that when we come in this fall and you see a fluctuation in this with the revenues received, where'd that come from? And the bottom right over here on this sheet is very important. It can be easily to miss that at this point in time. So, sorry, Val.
No, I appreciate that.
Yep.
So as we go through the year, that year-to-date column in yellow will increase, obviously. So it's a good screenshot of where we are in comparison to what our budget is anticipated for the year. So lots of good markers. And even the pie graph has a breakdown of the proportion of where we spent our expenses. And as you can see, the majority of those costs are in salaries and benefits. And all of those salaries and benefits is instructional based, so teachers in the classroom, paras in the classroom. So just to be mindful of what that represents. Next is debt service. Nothing really to report here because our expenses mainly come during the months of June and December, so as we pay our debt. So this is pretty status quo. We have our ending fund balance at $1,750,353. And as you can see on the right, there's a comparison of where we are in the yellow of what we've spent and are expecting to come in as revenues to both those budget items.
Again, with this one, just be reminded that our tax payments come in June and December. Again here, so you'll see a significant fluctuation in that. So thank you, Valerie.
Absolutely. And another question I get is, why do we have the balance that we have? $1,750,000 is a lot. So the reason is that in state statute, we're allowed to have an X amount that we're over our actual debt service to help prevent and mitigate against if and when our property tax collection doesn't come in as anticipated, then we have a fallback. It's kind of a built-in rainy day so that we're not pulling from our actual rainy day, that we're being proactive, we're being mindful of what our expenses are and making sure that we fulfill our obligations. Next up is the operations fund. Lots going on here. So we get a little bit of course I see a little bit. 62,000 is a chunk that we get from ongoing local income taxes that comes on a monthly basis. Revenue for the month was $129,042. We had expenses that consisted of salaries and benefits. This is everyone that's not paid from the education fund in regards to school operations. So we've got custodians, groundskeepers, maintenance, bus drivers, administration. It's pretty much everyone else who's not in food service or paid from a grant comes from operation fund. So the expenses for the month within this fund are $929,563. Our ending balance after we pay all of our outstanding purchase orders is $3,372,057. And so what I want to highlight on this fund is the fact that, and we'll see it in the next area of the year-over-year comparisons, but we're actually down when it comes to our expenses year-over-year. And so that's purely because of all of the construction initiatives have, kind of teeter-tottered off balance a little bit. And so what you can expect is Mr. Hurdle to come to the board with projects and initiatives that are anticipated to be completed over fall break. So a little bit on the a little preview of what's to come for Operations Fund, but as we close out the year, make sure that we're spending within our budget to make sure that that's a balanced category. But yeah, lots of great information on this slide. Next up is our rainy day fund. So this is another area that we do have budgeted for this year. We have $1,500,000 budgeted. Nothing comes into this fund unless there was a transfer into this fund with a board approval resolution. So there's no revenue to report. $1,527 in expenses, leaving, and then we have an outstanding purchase order for some of that contractual work that's getting ready to be completed, leaving an ending fund balance of $2,865,938. So if you can, if you take note in comparison to this $2,865,000, almost $866,000, and then compare that to the $1,500,000 that we're approved to spend, just know that we're not, like the intention of the board through the approval of the 2024 budget is not to spend all of that $2,865,000, just that limit that where we're at with the $1,500,000. And then almost next to last here, so we have the food service fund. So for this month we had $3,555. So another reason for the low revenues, it's July, and so there's obviously no meals being served. And so some of the things that we did receive money for was those rebates that we received from the state and local groups. So because of the because of the summer food service feeding program, we did have some salaries, and we have some people who do work year round, and then some normal expenses. Total for the month in expenses was $39,566, leaving an ending fund balance once we pay all of our obligations. That's what represents on the encumbrances and outstanding purchase orders, in case that helps, is $632,894 is the ending fund balance for food service. Lastly, we have Curricular Materials Fund. So through revenue for the month was $4,664. This is collecting prior year balances that have been received, and then we had $95,192 in expenses for our ongoing curricular subscriptions, so our outstanding bills, once we pay those, we'll have an ending fund balance of $2,305,802. Is there any questions I can answer for the board this evening?
Jay, I bring this up every month, but when we look at what used to be the old textbook rental fee account, any updates on what the state's talking about with us for textbook adoption for science and social studies?
We're still in a holding pattern. From what I've seen, I've reached out to Region 8 with Cindy McKinney there to talk with her about that, to see when those next caravans are, to keep us informed so that we're on that, so that we could be a part of that and bring a group of teachers to look at those materials, to review those.
Right. So, the board, just a reminder to you that remember we had this conversation a month or two ago regarding about reimbursements from the state that we get with this, and so it'll be interesting to see how those projections are figured for next year along the way. But we did very well this year within that, so I just want to keep that out in front of you. So, Valerie, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Valerie. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the financial report for July?
Motion to accept the July 2024 financial report.
And is there a second? Is there any questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote on it. Cindy?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. McClellan? Yes. Mr. Melcher?
Yes.
Mr. Yarger?
Yes.
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Mrs. Heim? Yes.
And that motion passes 6-0. We'll move on to G1, appointment to the Warren Public Library Board.
Yes, the Board of School Trustees for our school district is responsible for the appointment of 3 seats to the Warren Public Library. We are recommending your approval to reappoint Karen Pinkerton to a 4-year term to begin October the 1st of 2024.
Okay. And would anybody like to make a motion for Mrs. Pinkerton?
I make a motion to reappoint Karen Pinkerton to the Warren Public Library Board.
Thank you, Kari. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you to Karen Pinkerton for her willingness to serve in that position. And if there's no other questions, we will vote on that motion.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. McClellan? Yes. Mr. Melcher?
Yes.
Mr. Yarger?
Yes.
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Mrs. Heim? Yes.
And that motion passes 6-0. We are in the home stretch. Item H1, items of discussion by board members. Does anybody have anything to discuss tonight?
I just want to mention I was fortunate enough to be able to speak to the fire and rescue class, the new one they have, last week. They are really excited. There's 16, 17 kids in that class, men and women, boys and girls. They are really excited, and I think it's a great offering for kids that age. There's such a desperate need for assistance in the fire and rescue side that this can only be a good thing. And just to go in front of those kids, all sorts of questions, all sorts of excitement there, it was very, very nice. So congratulations to Mr. Meyer and Mrs. Drummond. They've done a great job getting that started.
Mr. Trout, you shared some really exciting news with us at the end of last week. Would you like to share that with the public?
Sure. Valerie talked a little bit ago about ADM, which is average daily membership, which is a fancy word that the state of Indiana puts on for how many students do you have in your school district. Okay? how many students are attending your school each and every day. You know, when I came in as the interim business manager 2.5 years ago, it's no secret that our revenue is driven by the number of students that we have in our district. And looking back the last 15 to 20 years, we have averaged per year about 75 to 100 students a year in reduction of students that are attending our school district for a variety of reasons. Now, there was one year, 2010 or 11, where we were up 20, but that was the anomaly. We have consistently been down for quite a while. Each start of each year, I appreciate Tanya, who does this for me, Kari, who I mentioned here this evening, Rumpel, who does all of our data in our district, about taking attendance. I mean, these are students that are actually in our district, not students who have registered who haven't attended, or not students that haven't registered and attended before in the past, but how are we doing? As of last Friday, and I kept checking it, I kept asking Tanya if her numbers were correct. I went back to Kari, asked her, she reassured me again today. We are up, as of last Friday, 112 students this year. If you do the math, about 7,100 students each.
$7,100 each.
Huh?
$7,100
each. You know, we're in $800,000 of extra revenue this year, which is amazing. When you look at our financials and you can plug in $800,000 extra dollars, it makes a significant difference. You take into account too that we didn't lose another 100. You could easily make the case to give those kids $7,100. You're well over $1 million of revenue that we weren't anticipating that we were going to have. And so it's no secret that I've taken my fair share of criticism for marketing and branding and all of that. And is that a piece of it? Sure, I think it's a major piece of, we're starting to share our message. We're starting to control our message. We're starting to send our message out in the community about the good works that goes on. But let me tell you something. The reason kids attend our school district primarily is because of the outstanding work of the adults, the teachers, the paras, the principals. All those people are making a significant difference. And so I just wanted all of you to know I'm cautiously optimistic is what I will say. But a year ago at this time, those numbers held. You know, what we were down last year stayed real steady for this next month. I'm anticipating we may not be up 112, but I'm confidently going to tell you we're not going to be down 100 again this year. And I think there's a lot that goes into that. And so we'll dive into this a little deeper as the weeks go on. Just last week of that 112, we had 19 new students in our district just last week. So I do believe that some of the data that we're showing this evening matters. I think the work that we're doing in messaging matters. Yes, how we brand ourselves and the professionalism that we do sending our messages, yes, that matters a lot. We've done nothing the last 15, 20 years, and we've taken a beating losing kids to surrounding areas and those type of things. And so to finally, I think, to turn that corner this year says a lot for what our staff and our teachers and our principals and our classified staff. I don't care if you're a bus driver, a custodian, whoever you are, you're working with our kids. I'm very encouraged by that. So I wanted to share that with you. I didn't know he was going to have me share it in front of everybody. But I'm really cautiously optimistic about that number. So thank you.
And it's unofficial until
October the 1st.
That's when the state counts. And
That's when the state counts. But Mrs. Rumpel has done an outstanding job. We've pulled kids out. So these are not just, kids that were with us last year that haven't registered or pulled off. Kids that we know are going to other school districts are pulled off. So that's a hard, fast number. We've held that number steadily since the first day of school, and actually went up again 19 students last week. So, okay.
And do we also have a number of students that went to another district last year and have returned this year?
Yeah, I don't have that number by district from where they came from to what's happening, but we'll have that number for you too.
Okay.
So I will have it broken down by where did these students come from last year, so on and so forth. I'll really spell that out. I haven't dove down that deep in it quite yet.
Okay. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. It's good data. Data's great. Does anybody have anything else?
Yes, one more thing, Mr. Trout, can you elaborate a little bit more and share what's going on at Salamone, please?
Yeah, sure. There's a pretty rampant rumor, from what I understand, going around that we're shutting Salamone School. Not sure how all this gets started or where it come from. It doesn't matter. But that's what's going on out there. No, we are not. There are zero plans to shut Salamone Elementary School. As a matter of fact, if you know this as a board, recently we approved $5.5 million of HVAC work, out there to get started to do. So why would we shut a building that we're investing $5.5 million in? I don't know. Yes, part of that plan could possibly include, you guys have not made that decision yet, of tearing down the pool area at the end of the building. But that does not mean that we are going to tear down the entire building and no longer have students there. There couldn't be anything, quite frankly, farther from the truth. And so I appreciate you bringing that up, Kari.
Thank you.
Oh, rumors. Okay, anything else? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?